sell me the logo. Okay, because I'm not coming with.
Yeah.
And if I don't go with, the players aren't going to go with. The green wall's not coming with. The sponsors aren't coming with.
Yeah.
Sell it to me. The more excited the players get, the more excited the crowd's going to get, the more excited the fan base is going to grow. You know, people don't just want to see somebody win. They want to see somebody win with style.
We don't need the founders. They're too difficult. We don't need them. FaZe is huge. Not like in an egotistical way, but I don't care anymore.
Dude, they try to get rid of Scump in the team. They try to get OpTic out of Call of Duty. And that's the day that I said, all right, it's time to take my gloves off. I feel confident because my team feels confident. Businessmen will cut your throat if it's best for their business.
100%.
The second that you yourself become a businessman and you do the same thing they would do, whoa, dude, I thought we were boys. What's up with the feelings and feelings and feelings? If you are a creative person, that means that you can solve any problem in the world because nothing is unsolvable. It just hasn't been solved yet. And I don't know these people and I don't know their names, so I'm not talking about anyone.
I will. They're all morons and I hate them.
Good luck to the person that tries to get in between me and OpTic. You know what I'm saying?
Hecz, thank you for having me at the Hecz quarters. An honor to be here. I've seen a lot of this over the years on camera, so.
It's an honor to have you.
It's my first time in Dallas. Yeah. Been to Texas once for X Games. You guys won.
Twice.
You guys won the medal when I went in Austin.
Yeah. And the one the following year.
Legends, of course. OpTic, always snap with the got my OpTic hoodie on. Of course, I brought out this hoodie. Hecz sent me this a few years ago with a FaZe patch on it. Appreciate it. Was a special gift, so
it was.
It was a perfect time to rip it out. So
1 of 5, 1 of 5.
1 of 5. Who else got it? Tommy?
Banks, Tommy,
Rain.
I think Rain got one. Yeah.
Okay.
We sent. I mean, I just gave a list and then we sent them out.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, yeah, it was really cool to be here in Hecz quarters. You know, this place is legend. You've done so much content out of here. Thank you for having me. I want to talk to you a little bit about you, though. You know, we're gonna talk about OpTic, of course, because you are OpTic, right? OpTic is how long you been OpTic now?
Since 2006.
2006, so almost
20 years.
Almost half your life. Not really almost. Getting close to a point where it's half your life. For me, FaZe has been half my life already. Joined when I was 14. I'm 28 now. It's going to be half your life soon.
Very soon.
It's crazy,
Looking forward to it.
So you are OpTic. OpTic is Hecz. And, you know, so much to talk about. Obviously, we're going to talk about when OpTic kind of got taken away from you for a little bit and you got it back. And there's a lot.
I don't know about taking away.
Well, you sold it, yeah. Sorry. I'm maybe projecting how we feel about FaZe. But you sold OpTic. You ended up getting it back. But before all that, I want to talk about Hecz as a person. Hector, right? And you're kind of where you grew up, family background, what your childhood was like. If you can give us some.
So I was born in El Paso, Texas, right on the border. My mom, in 1980, by the way, I'm 44. Gonna be 45 in February. But my mom used to be a caretaker in El Paso. She used to take care of old ladies. She was pregnant with me, and she gave birth to me while on the job, right? And the distance between where she worked and where we lived in Juarez was close, like a 10-minute drive over the river, the Rio Grande. But I grew up in Juarez. I was born in El Paso, but I grew up in Juarez. Went to school there up until 8th grade, 7th grade, and then in 8th grade, that's when we moved to the United States. But grew up in Juarez in the 80s, early 80s was cool, man. Like, you know, you don't know anything. Internet doesn't exist. Like, you know, I grew up very, very poor in some years, right? Obviously, you know, the ebb and flows of that. We didn't have a bathroom in like, I remember having to go in a bucket for a small period of my life. But, you know, when you're a kid and you know nothing better, your life is great. Hide and seek was awesome. Creating your own toys was awesome. We would find stuff in the garbage can, and this one time we found this little, it was called Avalanche, was the little race car, but all of the pieces were there except for the base of it. So we found wood and we remade it. And my childhood was always about creating stuff, even from an early beginning. Like, I was always attracted to like all the graffiti that was around there, but it's all gang graffiti, right? Pura Cuatro in the Cuatro Street was a 4th Street. Yeah,
dropping gang names here.
Yeah, well, that's my older cousin was in that, and I was in the neighborhood, so, you know, I was an up and comer Pee-wee, you know what I'm saying? But my childhood was awesome, man. Like, I no complaints. School was great. The way that I grew up may have not been a luxurious way to grow up, but there was always food on the table. My house was a very loving one. My dad was, you know, still to this day my hero. My mom, the best chef I've ever known. And you know, me and my sister, like we always had things to do. We had a lot of cousins. So there was never a dull moment for me growing up. I wouldn't trade it for the world, for nothing.
And you moved to America when you were in 8th grade.
1994, June of 1994. It was like the summer break in 1994. I was 14. I was 8th grade, Holmes Junior High in Wheeling, Illinois. 600990. And also, like I got super lucky, right? You know, a lot of people look at middle school and high school as like oh, you know, I was a shy kid, and you know that I didn't speak English, and that was like the only setback for me, that I wasn't able to communicate with everyone. So I made it a point to learn English as fast as I could, and I got the language down within a year, and it took me like another 6 to a year to lose the accent completely. My biggest fear was being made fun of, right? Like I always wanted to be the class clown. I was cool with everyone. So the only thing that was holding me back was this language barrier.
Yeah.
So growing up on the border, though, you used to get all the signals from El Paso and all the programming.
Yeah.
So you know, my brain had already been, you know, hearing English through all the cartoons and the show. So I don't know, it made it easy. It was pretty easy for me to learn it.
And you have a house in Mexico still, right?
No.
I thought you did. Maybe I'm thinking. I feel like did you go back to your childhood home?
I have.
Recently? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I walk through it on Google Maps all the time.
That's awesome.
You know, like I go back to the house that I grew up in. I go all the houses that I grew up in. The one without the bathroom, and it was like a community bathroom sort of stuff. And I go back and look at it. I haven't been back to the place that I'm from, Juarez, in over like 20 years.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, when my grandmother passed away was the last time that I was out there. I go to El Paso often, once a year, but Juarez, I just haven't.
It's interesting. My dad comes from Palestine. Very similar. His childhood sounds very similar to yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for him, a lot of people, I feel like, I don't know if this is the reason you don't go back, but a lot of, like my dad, I know he doesn't go back. He didn't want to go back because the last time he was there was when his parents passed away as well. And it's just like, I feel like a lot of people have that, kind of just cuts them off from their hometown when that happens. Do you make trips to Mexico in general at all?
To Mexico, yeah, but not to Juarez, where I'm from, and I still have family there. I still have cousins, aunts, uncles there, and you know, my mom doesn't want me to go back. She thinks I'm too famous, and then I'm gonna get abducted or something, and I don't think that's the case at all, right? I'm just a YouTuber, right? Whatever. But the universe has a way of always allowing a mom to say, "I told you so." You know what I'm saying? So on that fact alone, I just listen to that. Anything else that she tells me to do, I obviously do the complete opposite. But that one very specific thing,
you listen to it. Okay.
Yeah, that is like the one thing that gets her like upset. You know, it's your kid, right? So obviously, no matter how old you are, you're still going to be her kid, and I don't want to stress her out.
I understand.
You know?
They have those things that they kind of fixate on.
Yeah.
So what about, I guess, either in Mexico when you moved, did you play sports? What hobbies did you have?
Every sport. But I wasn't a good student. You know, I could remember everything and pass tests, but homework and paying attention in class, not making everybody laugh, that was just like, it's not me. The reason that we moved to the United States is because my mom didn't want me and my sister to grow up in the place in Juarez, because, you know, it's cartel land and stuff. But at the time, my dad was a security guard for the Mexican Lotto. This is the best way that I can explain it. And one day, he got carjacked at gunpoint, and you know, like he was making his rounds, picking up the money. Somebody pulls up, gets in the car, takes him, and they drive him to like the cemetery somewhere in Juarez. And I remember the day clearly because I was playing soccer outside my grandma's house on my mom's side, and I see him walking up the hill or the street. It was like San Francisco-ish, right? And I remember he had blood on him, and I'm like, oh. So I run to my pops, and I'm like, hey, what happened? He's like, oh, I bumped my head in a air conditioning unit. He didn't tell me the hard, cold truth. I was 13, 14. You didn't want to do that. So my mom's like, we're moving. If you don't come with, I'm still taking the kids.
Wow.
So my dad leaves his family behind, his mom behind. So that's a sacrifice that I couldn't do, right? My mom goes where I go. With that in mind, I always had it. I always had it in me that I had to make something happen. And before we moved, he's like, in this country, you can be whatever you want. So I took that to heart, and I said, all right, I'm not shy anymore. I'm an outgoing kid, right? And I did that. I was just an outgoing kid going forward. But, you know, the language barrier and all that was a little bit tough, and that was like the only thing that I felt like that was dragging me back to my shy self was that. So I just made it a point to learn as quickly as I could. so that I can continue to be, you know. And I was also like 13 years old, right? Like I'm starting to notice the girls, and I'm, you know, something different. So I'm like, yo, I gotta do this and that. So sports, I've always played them. Basketball's my favorite. Excellent point guard. In high school, I recorded myself. I wanted to submit my moves to N1 for the N1 mixtape. Never submitted it, but you know, whatever. Graffiti was my pastime, though. I've always been an artist, or always liked drawing. And the second that I found this art form called graffiti, it's like Pokemon to kids nowadays. Every time I saw a new piece from a different artist, I mean, you didn't know who it was, right? But you would see one, and I would just be enamored by what it took to do that. And I just put my 100 into this one thing for a very long time. And I'm not a talented artist, but I worked my off. Like you're not gonna work harder than me ever in anything, period, especially if I'm competitive about it. And I was.
Having known you now for like a decade, at least, if not more, probably, right? Everybody that's followed you has seen all your hobbies. Like one thing about you is when you have a hobby, like you put your full, you know, you go all in on it, and then you even cross them. You know, you like to kind of bring them into the, like you would graffiti Xboxes, right?
Yeah.
And you know, fishing's a hobby of yours.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just know your hobbies because it's always you post about it. What's cool, you're always making content about it, which is, you know, even what you said from the beginning. Seems like when you were a kid, you always wanted to create things too. You were saying, so you have that creative bone in your body. And you can't help yourself. Yeah.
No, luckily, man, it's the biggest cheat code ever. If you are a creative person, that means that you can solve any problem in the world, because nothing is unsolvable. It just hasn't been solved yet. And as far and wide as your imagination can go is the possibilities of finding a single solution for this one single problem. So when you're a creative person, you can pick and choose which solution you want to attack it from. So I've been very, very blessed to have this creative mind.
So you have a very famous story also of kind of when you decided to quit the corporate world and start OpTic, or go full into OpTic, should I say, which I want to hear about that. But before that, what jobs did you have? Because obviously, you started OpTic a little later than a lot of us started at, like FaZe, for example. Like I said, I was 14 when I joined FaZe, right? So I never worked before FaZe.
I was 26.
Yeah, like this whole, up to the point of what you just spoke about, still wasn't even born yet. 94, I wasn't born yet, right? Yeah. So I'm assuming you had a few different jobs before OpTic. So.
I started working when I was 8 years old, right? I worked at the factory that my dad worked at. My uncle was like the foreman or something, so he was in charge of like all the landscaping and all the other stuff. So I would go and mow the lawns on the weekends, and I would get a little bit of cash there. But the beauty about that is that on the other side of the factory was the garbage dump, and my grandfather on my mom's side, he worked there breaking down cardboard boxes, and I would go in there and try to help him. I ended up just spending my time like going to the top of the mound of boxes and then just sliding all the way down while he was breaking them down. And he never gave me a hard time. He was my grandfather. So, but I would help him at some point, like to put them together, and then we would go and dump them at a dump place. I would also help my aunt of the same uncle go to El Paso to buy supplies for her store, I believe. So like I would be walking back with like duffel bags full of pans and pots and like all this other stuff. And this one time, they bought my cousin, my younger cousin, who's now passed, but they bought him a Nintendo Entertainment System. And I remember carrying that from El Paso all the way to our house, and we walked, and I just had it in my hand, and I was like walking around proudly that I was holding this like magical thing that had just been released. And I would look at it, and I read it over and over as I'm walking. I see the little Mario brother and Super Mario, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, I'm gonna get to play this because it's my cousin's, but at the same time, I'm like, man, like one day I'm gonna have my own thing, right? Like it's like even as a kid. When I got to the United States, I worked at McDonald's for 4 weekends, only on Saturdays, only for 2 hours, right? So not a real job. And then I worked at UPS as a loader. It was the worst job I've ever had, which is essentially grabbing boxes and putting them on the trailers. And there was a conveyor belt in the middle, and the boxes would just never stop. And your job is to grab them and Tetris them and build walls and walls and walls and walls as you're going through. It was so bad that I would get home and my forearms would be like, as I'm showering, my forearms would be full of dirt because I'm grabbing the boxes. And this one night, I used to sleep in the living room. I slammed my hand on the coffee table because in my dream I was stopping a box from knocking, and I'm like, I'm traumatized. I can't do this anymore. And that same week, they went on strike, and that's the last time I worked at UPS.
Wow.
Yeah. And then after that, I worked at a bank from the time that I was 18 to 21, and then I worked at a mortgage company during the boom.
Yep.
And it was sublending. We were giving loans to people who didn't need to get those loans, or who didn't need, people that were making $60,000 a year getting a $600,000 house. You know what I'm saying? Like, because anyway, the reason it crashed was because of the work that I wasn't doing, but I was part of that work. And then after that, I went to work at AIG. Once that mortgage crashed and the housing crashed in the United States, I went to go work at AIG in the private client group, which meant that I was in charge of analyzing and making sure that rich people had all the coverage in the world. One of my accounts was the Facundo Bacardi empire, the great grandson of the Bacardi liquor. Jude, my wife, who worked with me there, and she also worked with me at the mortgage place. She had like Kim Kardashian and like all these other people, so she would like see she would see everything. So we would see the news as like, yo, Kanye just bought a $3 million ring, and my wife would be like, that's not how much it was. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, but they got insured for that, right? So
yeah,
those were my jobs. I'm sure I did a couple of things in there.
A lot of different things. And you think the banking stuff and kind of understanding that stuff helped you later on with OpTic? I mean, obviously.
Yeah, I think only because I knew how to talk to corporate people.
Yeah.
Because I spent my whole life, and who was Nadeshot at the time, right? Like, but 18, 19-year-old kid who hadn't had a job besides McDonald's. And
Yeah.
So it put me in a good position. I think the best thing that I did though was to realize early on that I did not have it in me to be a professional Call of Duty player. So how else can I stay involved in doing this? And it was, well, somebody's got to manage the thing. And I started doing that, and then, the rest is kind of history.
So that's what I was going to ask you. How did OpTic Hecz come to fruition? So you started OpTic, and you were doing a little bit of this while you were still working, correct?
Yeah, so OpTic had already been created, OpTic J and like a couple of dudes. But at the time, it's what it is now, just clans, right? It was people that made a team in game battles, and more often than not, they were like work buddies or friends. And I remember the day that I got the Xbox 360, we were at Sam's Club, and my wife, girlfriend at the time, Jude's like, why are you buying that? You're an outdoors guy. You fish. You don't play video games. You've never played video games. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I don't know, I kind of want to. And we had just moved into, or I just had gotten my first apartment, moved out of my house, and I started playing Call of Duty, and I beat the game, and then it said, click here for multiplayer, and I was like, it was online multiplayer, and I'm like, what? So I click it. And I get in there, and the map is St. Mary Glees, Call of Duty 2, and I have my sniper out. I'm in Broken. I'm looking across the map, and right before the character leaves the screen, I shoot him, and that feeling of sniping that dude from across the map before he goes out of frame just grabbed me, man. It grabbed something out of me that said, "You love this," and just did that forever. I just sniped and sniped and sniped and sniped. And one day I ran into this dude named OpTic Black Widow, and he beat the lobby super quick that I was in. So I'm like, what? I'm like, who is this? Never ran into him again, but I did run into another OpTic Preview legend, and he beat me too. And I'm like, OpTic. I'm like, it's not the same guy. And I'm like, and then I'm like, oh my God, they're a team. And right there, I'm like, oh my God, they're team. And I'm 20 something, got my own place. I'm playing against 13, 14, 15-year-olds. So I was like, it doesn't, miss me that I was surrounded by youth, right? Anyway, little by little, I became good enough, and then the whole YouTube thing happened. Oh no, well, I started refereeing, right, the matches
really?
At a website called NX Gamers.
Okay.
At the time, NX Gamers and game battles were going head to head, especially in Call of Duty, because NX Gamers was created specifically for Call of Duty, but it had its ancillary stuff. And I started doing research, and I came across that website, and it says sign up to be a referee. And I'm like, yeah, I have a job. I don't need to get paid for this. I want to be better at this ththing. And like, these kids are beating me. How do I do this? So I started refereeing people that were way better than me, and I learned a bunch, right? I learned a lot.
What is refereeing? Like, what is that actually?
You're just sitting there and checking the scores to make sure that it's during tournaments. So you put in, and then you input it into the system, and then it advanced. The teams that win advance. The records, same bracket stuff that you see now. But I learned a lot, and I was always available So this guy from OpTic named OpTic J, he kept on hitting me up, and he's like, hey, you want to, you want to ref this thing? And I was always available, and we developed a friendship in which I started to get into their lobbies, and I may have not been the best at the time, but little by little, I started to get better because you're as good as your competition.
Yeah.
And if I'm playing with pros, like there was a level of elevation that happened in skill. So, as we went through that, I just, I'm like, I started to talk with them about like what they were doing, and I'm like, what about sponsors? And I knew what sponsorship was because a friend of mine was sponsored by a spray paint company called Montana, and I'm like, oh, this is the same thing. You're offering eyeballs for this thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm working at AIG, and I start to see this guy named Grizz that we knew from Call of Duty 2. He was part of a clan called Side by Side, IXI. And he was making videos back then. A lot of people were making videos back then. Nameless had videos out there. OpTic Crew had stuff out there, sniping stuff. And Poor Minorities, who's now known as Choppy, but he was like one of the best snipers. And I was just like in love with the sniping. And I'm like, man, this guy's sick. Then there was this like this clan named SWAT, and this clan called Gods. And there was this guy named God's Nightmare who was the leader of that clan. And I'm like, holy. Hit him up. I'm like, yo, please let me be in, let me get in. And I'm like, I realized I'm like this 24-year-old asking like maybe some 17-year-old to let me in, let me in. And he never replied. And I didn't feel any type of way about it, right? I'm a grown man. But little by little, I became friends with the guys in OpTic. They had just started it, and within a year, everybody graduated from high school and they went off to do their own thing. So I took over the team in that point, like 2006, and I'm like, we were just making videos.
Yeah.
No, we weren't making videos. We were just playing, and I'm like, we're not a top 50 clan on this website. And then my brother at the time was like, yo, we should make videos like Grizz. And he's like, give me a capture card, And I was like, yeah, all right. I used to give my brother everything. He's 10 years younger than me. So I'm like, all right. So I got it, and I tried it out, and I, as a creative, fell in love with it, right? I'm like, I took it as a creative outlet. So I'm like, okay, cool. So then I started making videos, and then we started making sniping videos, and then I said to myself, I'm like, yo, snipers have like this aura about them, right? So I'm like, yo, we should just be snipers. We should just be a team of snipers. Like everybody out there is doing whatever they want. We're only going to snipe. We're gonna dominate sniping, and that's how the first sniping team ever came to be.
It's like 2008, 2009, because I came in.
Well, it's Call of Duty 4.
Yeah.
It was during the height of Call of Duty 4 is when the first sniping team came.
Because I feel like I was so early in the scene, but I don't recognize most of the names you just said.
Yeah, not a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Well, you got to take into account that everybody's story begins somewhere, and there is history before that. Like I can say I'm an OG, but then you look at people like Corey Dunn, people like Jason Lake, right? Jason Lake's been around since 2003.
Crazy.
I started in 2006.
Yeah.
So a lot of history was there. Maybe not. Like, esports obviously was just starting there, right?
Yeah.
Like it was nothing. So when the first sniping team happened and we were doing that, our thing was we don't say no to 1v1s. And we don't say no to 1v1s and obviously it's playing on shipment.
Yeah.
And the second that we recognized that there's spawn trapping, I created the thing, the rules of the cross.
Yeah.
After a kill, you have to get out of the cross of the middle.
Yeah.
To make the next kill a viable kill.
So no spawn trapping.
No spawn trapping.
Okay.
No spawn trapping. At the time, Hutch was watching our videos, right? Shout out Hutch. At the time, there was this site called Top Notch Multimedia. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
TNM?
I do remember.
Ebonics, Operator Perry, VGI Dynamite, like those dudes started this thing, and I saw that, and I'm like, yo, that's clever. I love that. At the same time as I discovered them, I discovered ProMod and all of those dudes, right? So like there's this convergence of communities that's segregated, because the PC players are competing in competitive Call of Duty, and there is casters, there is fans, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, holy, this is like, this is like there's something here, and I remember thinking, I'm like, whoa, why does their Call of Duty look so much different than ours? So they're playing on PC, obviously, endless opportunity. Again, like I just kept on getting these sources of inspiration, and it was like a puzzle piece coming together for me. It's like, okay, if you put this together with this, and if you do this here, and I'm like, man, there's something here, right? So they catch wind of us, Top Notch Multimedia, and they're like, and at the time, that was the first time I've ever seen somebody go crazy in the lobby. Operator Perry, Ebonics, and somebody else get in the lobby, and they're recording, And as soon as they get in the lobby, you remember back then it was like you would hear this noise, like boom, when like a new
people join. Yeah.
And when they joined and they saw who it was, all the kids were like, oh, and I was like, oh, I got the chills. I'm like, oh my God, that is what's happening.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody else was looking at what was happening. They just felt like it was like something cool.
Yeah.
But I recognized immediately that there's fandom there. And if there's fandom there, there is opportunity to make it bigger. So they catch wind of OpTic because we're saying no to nobody. We're undefeated. We're not losing. And they're like, yo, let's play. And we're like, all right. It's simple. If we're playing 9 hours a day, only 1v1s, and they're playing 9 hours a day sniping in public lobbies, we're gonna destroy these kids. So we did. We became friends with them. They never uploaded any of our videos though.
Oh, really?
I'll always be mad about that. And maybe they weren't good enough, but yes, they were. Right? Maybe not mine, but my teammates for sure.
Yeah.
And then Machinima happens, right? And Hutch is like, yo, I gotta leave. I can't be an OpTic. And my brother, I remember, we're driving to the city. My brother's sitting next to me. We're on speakerphone with Hutch, and Hutch is our biggest draw at the time, right? Next to didnt. And as we're going through this thing, we're thinking like, yo, like he can't. My brother's like, he can't leave, yo. Like OpTic will be done. And I'm looking. I'm like, no, it's not. And then he's like, yo, tell him that he can be the leader. And I was like, shut up. Like, I'm not doing that.
Your brother.
Yeah.
Tell me. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So my brother has the same temperament as me, and he was telling me, I'm like, yo,
tumors, right?
Yeah, tumors. He's like, and I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, yo, listen, Hutch, I'm happy that you got opportunity over there. Thank you for being here. We're gonna be friends still. Obviously, we're gonna still play. So yeah, go do your thing. If there's any opportunity over there, let me know. Everything changed from that moment on, because up until that point, nobody could make money on the internet. No one. Yeah. Imagine a world in which you can start a YouTube channel, but you can't monetize it. At least now you can. Back then, there was no monetizing.
Yeah.
And the only way to make money on YouTube videos was through Machinima. So Hutch, being the solid dude that he is, puts our name in for the premier directorship, because they were about to start Machinima Respawn, a multi-channel network that would pay you X amount of money, and it was guaranteed back then. Were you around for that?
I wasn't.
Okay, so think about this. Machinima says to Hector, hey, we're going to give you guaranteed $2.50 for every one, $2.50 CPM.
Oh, okay.
Guaranteed.
Okay.
And I'm like, and he's like, because their thought was like, yeah, like we may be losing money between January and March, but once December comes, they're still going to get $2.50 while we're killing that $14 ads.
Yeah.
So I started a show called Top 5 Kill Cams. It became an instant hit. I remember sitting in my mom's thing looking at 200,000 views, and I'm like, 200? I'm like, oh my God, like that's a lot of money. And finally I'm making money, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my wife is still working, and I haven't brought any money off of this thing.
Wait, so you're not working anymore at this point?
No, I wasn't working. Well, once the Machinima thing started, because in 2009 is when I walked away completely from corporate America.
So sorry I don't want to cut the story, but that's
bring it back. Yeah,
that context that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So you quit before you got monetized on YouTube. So what made you quit your? So you said
I was a space cadet. I was daydreaming. I was in my Rolodex. If I could go back and get it, I wanted to be Grizz's agent, because I saw that he had 50,000 views per video. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, why isn't Game Informer interviewing this guy? There's no way that Game Informer has 50,000 subscribers. In my head, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to be this guy's agent. I got to get him in front of them. And then what I'm also going to do for him is like, we got to figure out a way to have the 0 hour, which is that he promotes on his YouTube channel that once a day at 6 o'clock, he's going to be live streaming, or he's going to be doing this live. And I'm like, where would he do live at, right? And that was like something that quickly went away. So I reached out to this guy, to Grizz, who I known since Call of Duty 2, by the way. And I'm like, I don't know why, but I didn't pitch him on being his agent.
You didn't.
Luckily. But the thought was there. And I'm like, well, maybe I should just do that for my team. And as I'm dreaming about these things, my work is dropping. My manager is on my nonstop. I'm in corporate America. This is a serious program within AIG, a much larger thing.
Yeah.
And we just got into a disagreement, and I walked away.
And was your wife pregnant at the time?
My wife was pregnant, and we worked in the same place on the same floor, and when she heard that I was being fired, you know, think about it, right? She's pregnant. We have 2 incomes. We're gonna go down to 1 as we're about to give birth to live. And she like saw me. She looked out the window and she saw me like walk towards the car. And she said she was like a nervous wreck. She went and cried in the bathroom because she didn't know what was gonna happen. And, you know, I'm doing this, but I knew that there was something.
You were
there.
close. Like, you felt like you were close.
I just knew there was something there.
Yeah.
You know, like there was no way to monetize it. The only way I knew to monetize was sponsorships. Not to get into it, but there was like this one company called Drink Redux, which had a energy drink called Cocaine. So we were sponsored by Cocaine at one point, and it didn't go anywhere because it was just like I knew in my head that our videos are being watched by kids.
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm not gonna take this shortcut,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I went home and I started working on Call of Duty, and then what I just said happened, the conversation with my brother, Hutch leaving, and then Machinima happening. And I told my wife, my girl at the time, I'm like, hey, we're about to start making money on videos. They're gonna pay us $2.50 for every 1,000 views, and I'm like, we're getting like 100,000 views, so that, you know, I'm like, there's like some money,
yeah.
right? If we do this daily, blah blah blah. The first check that I got from Machinima was 16 cents. after a full year of working,
A full year.
a full 6 months of working.
Yeah.
They didn't pay until a year after because they had like a 90-day grace period to pay to tabulate all the views and all that stuff. So my first check was 16 cents.
So after you like telling your wife, don't worry, like I'm gonna get paid.
And she used to be
pregnant.
cool. Man, no, we had just.
Then she gave birth.
She gave birth, yeah, and the first check 16, and she's like, all she ever said to me, no pressure ever, nothing, no, get off from your, go work, like no, she never gave me any tough times, and all she would say was like, show me the money, and I'm like, yo, this is gonna work. She's like, all right, show me the money, show me the money, show me the money.
You got fired, or you quit, whatever.
It's a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. That usually happens.
Deservingly fired.
Yeah. So you told her like you're not gonna go get another job. You're just gonna go full into.
We looked.
Uh-huh.
She looked for me, and I would go, and I was just like, nah, and she was just like, man, just like, I'll take care of us.
Really?
She was
That's
gangster.
crazy.
Yeah, she's gangster like
That's
that.
crazy. So she wanted you to just go chase the stream.
Yeah, and I'm like, why? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, you crazy. Like, that's how I know you're crazy. You know, like, I get it, dude. Like, I'm handsome. You know, like, okay. So the first check is 16, and I have it in my hands because it came in the mail and Google whatever, and I'm like, here's the check, and she's like, what?
No.
I'm like, I'm looking at the views. I'm like, baby, I promise you, there's way more money coming. Second check was 16 grand, right? So it's,
Wow. Okay.
which came a month later, right?
A month
Because
later.
it cut up. So I'm like, see, I told you. And 16 grand is a
crazy.
lot of money to get like all at once, right? From playing video games.
What was your what was your salary at that?
At that place, I was making. So in the mortgage industry, I went from making 110 because I was a high producer to 35, 45 grand. The transition from the mortgage days where I was driving a Beamer and she was driving a Merc, we went to none of that.
You're making 40 grand a year.
To making 40 grand a
At
year.
the last job before you got
tops.
fired at AIG.
At AIG.
Wow.
To making 40, driving her 1993 Honda Civic, no AC, no heat. So it's Chicago, it's cold. The shifter doesn't have the knob. It was just a spoke.
Yeah.
So I had to grab a rag and push it down to shift it.
Crazy.
And every time I would go to work, I would feel like a kid that's waiting for Christmas break to happen. Like I knew there was something. Like I knew that I was going towards something.
Yeah.
So, something magnetic. Like the universe was pushing me in a direction.
So after all of that, after a year, you finally got 16K.
16K.
So half your salary in 1 month. And I mean, that's when everything.
It wasn't 1 month. It was like the accumulation of a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was never going to do anything else in my life besides that. I'm like, if I would have made 10,000, if I would have made 5,000, I would have figured out a way to make that 4 times, even if I had to work 4 times as hard, because it was better than going to work in data entry. You know? Having to press 3, 4, 4, 3 to go piss. Get out of here, man. Like that's no way to live.
Yeah. So okay, it's crazy because this is like 2010 probably.
2010.
And, you know, also shout out Hecz. I have to say it, but at that time, when you talk, that is when you also shout out FaZe Clan.
Yep.
Before I was in FaZe, same
Sniper's
thing.
Nest with OpTic Hecz.
Same thing you said, right? It was just a group of friends at the time. They met you at an MLG event. You shouted them out. So Hecz put on FaZe. For whoever doesn't know that history, there's a very famous video of him with Resistance, one of the founders, and right, and he's like shouting out FaZe. I'm sure a lot of viewership went their way after that, and there's a lot of people in the industry that you've put on. So you know, you've been here since 2008. It's crazy the stories that you're saying, and I think it's so cool that you had the jobs before because, like you said, it made you think in that way. Even the sponsor thing, like looking at Grizz and be like, why is this guy not sponsored? Like, it sounds obvious now in 2024, right? But the time that was
well. The thing is, and this is we can move on from Machinima after this. Jay and FaZe, well, FaZe got a job at Machinima, so he drove from Ohio to LA. After that, Jay, who was working as a content creator at OpTic at the time, he's like, hey, you think you can give me a job at Machinima? And I was like, I can ask, right? And long story short, at one point, the game station TGS that was like Maker, I think it was Maker Studios. Remember that?
Yeah. They got sold for like $600 million.
Yeah. So Maker Studios had a gaming division called TGS with Starkey one of the StarCraft guys. Come to us, we pay a higher CPM and this, that, and the other. And he's like, and I knew that one of the CS commentators was getting paid on their own channel, and I'm like, well, is it true that you can monetize our channels? And then they're like, yeah, but it's a little bit of a longer process. You'd have to be with us for a year or some rule. And I'm like, oh, so I called Machinima, my contact, and I'm like, hey, I want to know if there's a way that I can get out of this contract because they want us and they want to pay us a higher CPM. And Machinima was like, you're like one of our star creators. We can't let that. We can't lose our position we can lose talent to somebody else. That's something coming. So I'm like, well, we're leaving unless you can figure out a way to monetize our channels. And they're like, monetize your channels? I'm like, yeah, like make us part of your network and let us make money on OpTic Nation at first, and then eventually we can spread out to that. Up until that point, nobody had that opportunity. And I negotiated that with them to make that a part of their program. Wow. So when I put that thought in them, they're like, holy, we can go from one channel to 1,000 channels, and we can sell ads against all of these channels. So that's when people started being able to make money on that. It was my negotiation, personal negotiation with them to allow us to make money on our channels. If that conversation doesn't happen, it would have been a long time before
they figured it out.
Before all of this figures out. So before you guys can make money on your channel, before anybody. And I always tell that story because it's important, right? It's something that I'm proud of that I was able to do for not just OpTic, but for everyone.
That's amazing.
And because that happened, a lot of people were able to quit their jobs to focus solely on their channels, and then everything became what it became.
That's, I mean, as I said, right?
Verifiable, go and look at it.
I just said right before how you put on FaZe, and you've always been putting people on. I didn't know that. I've never heard you say that. That's insane. Myself as a 14-year-old, I remember signing with Machinima.
Yeah.
When FaZe was there at the time, and Rishi.
Yep.
They signed me. To this day, I'll never forget when they signed me when I was 14. Signed my channel that was monetized. So I didn't know that your conversation was.
Go look for it.
That's amazing. That's crazy. That's how you know how early you were.
Yeah.
That's so AdSense as we know it now started from that moment.
Do it all over. The regret that we talked about, I should have said, hey guys, I'm gonna monetize your channels. So
yeah.
You're gonna give me 25 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, no.
So at this time when OpTic, I have to just say one thing, just as a fan. I remember watching D-Treats, 30-0 on sub base. Intervention. I feel like that was one of the videos that got me into sniping. So shout out OpTic D-Treats, one of the legendary members. A lot of people that are watching may not know him.
Many can quick scope. Few can snipe.
That was his. That was
his
quote. That guy was just like special. One of those. I just remember watching his videos and just getting that feeling.
Yeah.
And I saw him go 30-0 with the intervention on sub base, and I was just like, dude. And I always after that wanted to try to get a 30-0.
50-inch TV, playing from a couch on a 50-inch TV.
That's like crazy.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite players of all time. I always give him his props because I don't know what he's doing now. I think he's still streaming and playing like other stuff, but he definitely was one of the guys to put OpTic on for sure in the early beginnings because he had he's man to this day.
He is. So at this point, right, you were running OpTic, like you said, right? You have some people on the channel. So how did it work when you talk about that $16,000 check? Were you making all the money from OpTic's content? Were you paying players out just at the beginning, right? Was all your income coming from that? Because you've spoken also about how early on you kind of paid yourself a minimum salary and OpTic was losing money, but you did it, for the vision, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of different phases of I think this. So it's it's hard to kind of put it in order, I guess. But
yeah, so immediately when when the Machinima opportunity came to be and we started getting monetized, I told everybody, I'm like, you're gonna keep 80% of everything that you make. We're gonna keep 20 for taxes and maybe some travel. Because at that point, once you guys came along, I'm like, we have to be more than just this because we're not gonna be able to compete. They took everyone, and the team Tajas that you guys releasing, like that revolutionized the way that we were thinking. And I'm like, I got to get back into competitive. Like that was my passion. That's competitive Call of Duty. So I thought to myself, I'm like, I'm gonna go to an MLG event, and it's gonna be me, Hutch, C-Nanners, and Tabe. I'm like, I got to convince them because if we go there, we're gonna sell more T-shirts than everybody else. We're gonna get kicked, but we're gonna sell more T-shirts. We're gonna be the most popular. We're gonna have the biggest crowd. It's C-Nanners. It's Hutch.
To compete, you're saying?
Yeah, to compete.
Okay.
And then I'm like, it might be easier to approach a team that already exists and try to turn them into personalities, right? And that thought right there was the thing that changed everything and set us on the path to be here today. Because had I gone with my original idea, which is still true to this day, then I don't know what would have happened. But this was the right thing because from that, Nadeshot came to be, right? He was a shy kid, and you put a camera in front of him, and when you tell people that it's okay to be yourself, just tune it up a little bit. Don't change your personality, but do influx a little bit more. Make it entertaining. That's what changed the game.
Was Nadeshot on the first team that you picked up?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was Nade, Flawless Vengeance, Nade, and Merc is the first team that competed for us at a MLG event, 2010.
So you approached them and you turned them into OpTic.
Yeah, and then we were that same time we were in our hotel room, and I'm like, yo, you guys like to the Rambo, JCap, to the big timer. I'm like, yo, you guys should join OpTic. I'm like, look how much I'm making on Machinima, and it was like they saw three deposits. 3,900, 3,500, 3,700. And I'm like, that could be you. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I scooped them up.
Wow.
And from there, dude, like it spread like wildfire because we already had 300,000 subs.
From Sniping, yeah.
Yeah, from Sniping. OpTic Nation, D3's, every Predator. Oh my God. Logan Kiesling.
Yeah,
OpTic,
I don't know how mentioned
Predator.
We haven't mentioned Predator yet.
Dude,
Yeah,
that guy too, man. Like a staple in college. One of the most legendary people that changed the game for OpTic also,
his montage Predators. Another one. You just have these moments where you remember when certain things were released and watching. And
dude, it was
OpTic,
crazy.
You guys were, well deserved. I mean, you put in so much work. That's why I'm so excited to talk to you and like hear from you because, dude, people just look at things as if it's so easy or it came this way. But dude, again, you being 26, this story of you quitting, and it's unbelievable what you've done for OpTic, but the whole industry.
Yep.
And thankfully, hopefully you feel like you've been people have given you credit, and so I've seen not that it really is probably the biggest thing. Hopefully to you though, the award you've been kind of given awards for it, put in the Esports Hall of Fame for it. And it's very well deserved. When you hear your story, you understand why. And I still even feel like the people that are giving you these things don't even really know the full story. So it's
because like them, like it started at a different time.
It started at in probably the house, right? Is probably when people started really thinking about it, which is naturally where we're going with the conversation. You just talked about Merc and Big Timer or whatever. So you got those guys, you got a team. What put it in your head to move into the 650 house?
Nadeshot lived half an hour from where I lived, and he's like, "Yo, we gotta start making videos like together and all this and all that." And I'm like, yeah. And then we're like, oh, it's like, what about a team house? And I'm like, let's. At that point, like team houses in Korea were like, even Envy had a team house.
Really?
Yeah, but they were competing. They were practicing. They weren't. It wasn't a content house. And we're like, I'm like, yo, like we're onto something. Let's do this. So my wife and I did what we could to try to get a house. We were about to leave our house and go rent or live at our mom's house so that the players can live in our house. But luckily, this very cool Indian couple that owned that house like rented it to us without any background checks, right? And we were never late with a payment ever. Like that was like they're giving us a shot. Yeah. We gotta hold up our end of the bargain. At the time, we were with Imagine Customs, the controller company.
Yeah, I remember. We had them too. Yeah.
Do you still have those controllers?
I do.
I do too.
I have one of them.
I have Nadeshots.
Oh, that's legendary.
Yeah. I have everyone's. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But at the time, we went to Scump.
Yeah.
and Scuff was the one paying for the thing. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would have asked my man Duncan for some equity.
You're talking to the right guy, because
Yeah.
same thing with G Fuel. They sponsored our house. We always think about what it should have been.
Yeah.
Who knows what
young
they're worth
young
now.
people.
Yeah.
I didn't go to business school. Like I worked in corporate America, but as an employee, as a rat racer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, and you were what, in like your 30s at that point.
Yeah.
For us, we were, again, at 17, 18. I think this is one of the things that I always like have this defensive mechanism in me. That people are so critical of like decisions that we all made over the years. I'm like, dude, we're 18 years old. How are we supposed to know?
Untrained.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's what people should get credit for, right? Like, and another thing is like I was never shy at the fact that I was old, right? It was in the back of my head. I'm like, oh, these guys are gonna think that I'm a freak or something. You know what I'm saying?
You're not that old, but
I was
feel
20,
you.
26 playing with not playing with, but playing alongside 17-year-olds. You know, it's like it's no Diddy. You know what I'm saying? So like as we're going through this through all of these changes, I'm like, yo, you can make it about your age, or you can make it about everything else in the world. So I just made it about everything else in the world. I am who I am. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know?
No, but I mean, dude, your age was very important in that house, right?
I think so.
You basically, I don't want to speak for them, but I feel like you're a father figure for all of them, right? You have one daughter, but I feel like you have dozens of sons over the years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know sons sometimes could be used as like a jab that you're the dad, but I mean it in a good way, right? Like you have guided them all throughout their careers, probably personal. I can't imagine the personal lives too, how much you've done. So, I mean, what was that experience like being first off, that house, right? You moved in and obviously everything changed in that house. Talking about how you felt like your age was a disadvantage or you looked at it in a bad way. I mean, you probably kept the house together, I would assume, and you kind of probably.
Well, my wife and I, did our best, right? Finding stiff tube socks in Nadeshot's room, and like all of that, just napkins everywhere. It was just these gross little kids. But the toughest part was keeping it clean. That's why I enacted the $250 fine. $250. If I found a garbage somewhere, I charge $250 to be your garbage man.
Yeah.
And I'm in charge of your salaries.
Yeah.
So I was
you enforcing the.
Yeah, I had to teach them somehow to be productive members of our society.
Yeah. So you felt like that? Like, did you actually feel like you had this obligation to kind of like,
of course,
teach them how to be men?
Dude, the second that we took on Seth and I talked to Kristen and she's like, my son's foregoing college to pursue this thing. Immediately, I'm like, we cannot just play for the prize winnings. We have to be able to make money on a daily basis so that none of this is wasted.
Yeah.
So my number one goal for them was like, you got to make money. You got to make money. You got to make money. And content is the way to make money.
Yeah.
The championships are going to come if we're good enough. But do not, you know what I'm saying? And that was one of the best things that I did to sort of help and guide them to focus, because they're hard workers, right? Nature's one of the hardest workers. Scump is one of the if not the hardest person in OpTic. I give myself a lot of credit for being a hard worker, but Seth is a completely different monster. You know what I'm saying? So like I always give him credit for that. So once they understood the opportunity, like, wait a minute, we can make $30,000 if we make $1,000 a day on Twitch.
Yeah.
And then plus the YouTube, plus sponsorships. Like, what are we talking about? So everybody put their heels down and started working.
So, I mean, did you, moving into that house, I mean, obviously you never really know how big it's going to be, but did you really have it all planned out, or did you like, let's just get in the house and figure it out? With these, they ended up streaming in the legendary room all next to each other, right? It was revolutionary at the time. Like you said, maybe there were some houses, but not in that way.
That day that we went live, because everybody knew that we had a house, the day that we went live, we held the number 1 through 5 spot on Twitch, and Call of Duty had never done that up until that point.
Wow.
Yeah, ever. It worked. I mean, we knew that it was going to work just because our videos were good. So to see people together, like, that was another thing.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And obviously we took inspiration from that, right? We moved into the New York house.
It was like within a month you guys were doing that.
When did you guys move in?
2014, like early 2014.
Yeah, we were in end of 2014.
Yeah.
So again, we were doing YouTube videos a little different, but
we were both thinking, our orgs were thinking the same thing about the content house, because there was no way that you guys saw us move in and it only took 40. Like, you guys were already thinking about that.
Yeah. No, for sure. We all learned from each other. There's always different points where either we were learning from something you guys were doing,
absolutely,
or you guys were ahead of us and we're learning. I said that really bad, but either we were learning from you guys were learning from us, right? At every point.
Absolutely. People never give. Like, I always make it a point to tell the story about how you guys made me and my team pivot because the second that you guys took over in the sniping stuff, and we're the snipers. We started. I love sniping. So when I saw somebody else getting bigger props for sniping, I was like, ugh, ugh. But then, you know, that's when we turned to competitive, and then you guys got a competitive team, and I'm like, oh my God, if FaZe is in and OpTic's in, all we need is another FaZe or another OpTic to do this, and we're gonna be one of the biggest esports.
Yeah.
But none of them. None of the other orgs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you know what doesn't tick me off, but it does bother me. It's like everybody talks about esports organizations now and the pillars that what it is, and it's like they don't understand like how much of our strategy is in everybody's DNA. You know, fans specifically, right? Like we showed a blueprint that worked, and we did it in the public's eye, and you guys did it to T, if not better. And even though it's all laid out for them how to do it, they still never got it right. They thought that just picking up YouTubers was a thing, right? Because Envy picked up a sniping team, right?
Yeah.
When you guys picked up a comp team, after we picked up the comp team, they picked up sniper teams. And then other people, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was
a lot of people tried to.
The snipers took over Call of Duty, period, right? And if you look at it, if you think about it, like, think about the biggest orgs in the world, right? They came from sniping, period.
I think to your point, no disrespect, but like, I don't think any of them had people like you or me or the other founders that were actually that involved, you know, making the content too. Because again, it's easy to say, okay, we need, you know, look at OpTic's players and they need to stream like them or they make content like them. But, you know, again, when you're a part of the process, creative process, and especially you being in the house, like when you're guiding them to tell them what to do, you can't do that if you don't know the industry. At that point, you're already probably 8 years in, almost 6 years in, right?
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. I don't think any other org was ever able to figure it out, because also the reality is if anyone was ever kind of coming up, they either wanted to join FaZe or OpTic.
Yeah.
So we kind of had some sort of a monopoly on
Absolutely.
it, and you know, which we'll get to, I'm sure, when other money started coming in, it just started being ran by the wrong people, all these orgs. But just closing off the 60-50 house, because again, right, that was the first one.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the wrong thing, right? Okay, cool. But closing off the house, obviously that was a huge chapter of OpTic. Well, I know when we moved in, me and Rain spoke about it. Me and him had a lot of beef, like low key, a lot of jealousy, and like we kind of beefed in the house. And we didn't really have anyone. You know, we were all the same age. We had Sensei, who was a little older, a little wiser, would kind of
beat shit out of everyone.
Banks and Tommy, they're older, but I love you guys, but they didn't, you know, no extra wisdom there with any of that stuff. Yeah. So like, you know, we had beef, and you know, we had to kind of navigate through it. Nate and Scump have definitely talked publicly about their beef, right? But like, how was that in the house, and how did you kind of like maneuver through that? Because again, they're both equally as big, both equally as important.
Absolutely.
And their egos probably started growing. And
dude,
what was that like?
It was asinine. It was ridiculous, and you can't explain that to men who are locked in a house, who are both equally, like, one of them is the most talented Call of Duty player that's ever touched a controller, and the other one is the most popular personality superstar that one of the first, if not the first ever superstar in our industry, right? With Nadeshot being sponsored by Red Bull, like he is him, right?
Yeah.
And I think the amount of fights, and I have videos, the amount of fights, and I will record them just so that they can see it afterwards, how stupid it was.
Yeah.
The most famous one is they're playing on Raid, and Scump gets like an insane gameplay, but Nadeshot also gets an insane gameplay.
In the same game.
In the same game, and they're playing together. And I'm like, why are you guys even playing together? Play separately if you guys don't want to do that. They both had it, and they're like, well, you can't upload that. I'm gonna upload mine. And I'm sitting in my chair thinking, both of you upload it. Upload it tomorrow. Upload it. Who cares? And they just wanted to go at each other like nonstop. I put an end. Like they never got physical, right? And like I separated them all the time. And I'm like, yo, sit down, shut. Like let's be reasonable here, right? And it's just impossible. So you know, the vibes that we portrayed in front of the camera are real.
Yeah.
But there's also drama and bull happens behind the scenes that people didn't get to see at the time.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think that it's interesting having your personality thrown in the mix too, because I don't think you have really a high, like, you don't really put up with a lot of BS.
Tolerance.
So,
for that.
No tolerance, exactly. Yeah, no high tolerance for BS. So
I really have no room for tolerance
just
when it comes to
stuff.
stupidity. I don't even want to be involved in it.
Yeah.
But I had to. But it was good. I wouldn't change anything for them.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, you know, arguably the biggest, one of the biggest eras of OpTic.
Of
Obviously,
course.
we hope every year is bigger and bigger, but that was, you needed, like, that is what made OpTic what it is today, in my perspective, right? And I'm sure in your perspective, there's other eras that were maybe more important, but that's the cool thing about it. It's been around for so long that there's so many different eras to it.
Dude, OpTic came out of that house. Like a lot of
Yeah,
like a lot of
was huge.
Yeah, big things. Hunting OpTic with Syndicate, and at the time Syndicate was you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of good things happened from that house.
That's a great point, because Minecraft servers, I remember hearing about them all the time and how much money they were printing. Is that why you guys did it?
We made a mill in like a month.
That's insane.
And it was split between Andrew Peterman, who still works, he's the CEO of OpTic, Nate and Big Timer and I, because we were the only ones. Seth and Merc were like, nah, we ain't about that.
They don't want to play Minecraft.
Nah.
So you guys were just making videos on it.
We're making videos. Like, listen, we provided a service that a lot of people were interested in. They paid for what they wanted to pay for, and we just provided that service. But the amount of it was ridiculous. The
$1 million in a month. Was that like, did it keep going, or was it just a big few months?
It was like 400, 300. You know, it kept going.
So I mean, because again, in my perspective, right? I wasn't into Minecraft.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say? Go
I was gonna say that there came a point in which we had to sort of step away from it a little bit, because Nadeshot, being the content genius that he is, was out there blowing up people's bases. And I'm like, yo, I know it's funny and it's good for content, but you got to think about it as an owner, because now you're making these people buy more supplies, you know what I'm saying, by destroying it. So very quickly, we sort of put these guardrails up to do that. Yeah. One of the best times that we've ever had, too. Like, I love Minecraft. Love Minecraft.
Well, that's what's interesting, because like for me, Minecraft was never a game I got into, or it's not something I saw as an easy game to make content on, right? What our viewers are used to Call of Duty, but obviously in that house you guys could have done anything. The fan base is so strong for OpTic that they would watch anything, and I mean, it was a very, very huge, you know, very important decision. I think you guys made, so not just in money, but like transcending into like a different place, collaborating with Syndicate, right? It was a huge
it was
thing.
personality driven. The second that we got into the house, the Call of Duty sort of took a back seat.
Yeah.
Even though it was the base of the community, the playground. Once I told a community manager for Call of Duty Black Ops 2, I won't say his name because this dude, but and I mean that because like throughout the years he was just been a prickish, right? Even after that, but he famously told me that OpTic wouldn't be OpTic if it wasn't for Call of Duty, and I said, okay. So that's when we turned the Minecraft thing on, and it made us way bigger immediately, because we brought in a completely, you know, thanks to Syndicate, we brought in this completely different audience to what we were doing. And luckily we had people like Big Timer, Nadeshot, obviously excellent creator, that attracted the forces. So yeah, a lot of good things.
So that was the driving factor of that comment?
I think so, yeah. I was like, is that? I'm like, I don't think that's true, but if it is true, thank you for letting me know, because I am never going to be at the whims of somebody else's decisions.
Yeah.
And look at that. Full circle moment later on in the years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we could really get into it, but now, obviously, you're still in Call of Duty. You obviously love Call of Duty, but it's unfortunate. I feel like no shot Call of Duty, and there's been probably so many different people that have cycled through. I don't know anyone at Call of Duty. I never had conversations with people there, but I mean, I remember us in Black Ops 2, like, we wanted a FaZe camo, right? We did FaZe 5, one of the biggest recruitment challenges ever. We had like 200,000 people
Revolutionary way.
And, you know, part of it, the way to enter it was buying some of the new camos and hitting trick shots with it. And it's just like, dude, we probably got the millions of dollars in even after all of that, they don't care. Like, they would just like ignore you. They wouldn't even want to give it. We just wanted a FaZe camo.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like years later, they became FaZe skins when the game kind of started going down. You see the same thing with Fortnite. Well, when they're up here, they don't want to work with anyone. When it started going down, they started doing these icon skins. I mean, Ninja was speaking to me about it, how like, you want to do it as peak. They said no. They come back to him a few years later. It's unfortunate, but it feels like there's always just a couple people in companies.
You can't blame the businessmen for doing business things. You know, that's the.
But I mean, like, is it not better business? It would have been better business to make the collaborations. You don't think so? They would have made infinitely more money. That's the thing. I don't think it's business. I think it's ego and just
Advanced Warfare was the first time that an OpTic skin and a FaZe skin appeared in the game.
Yeah.
Okay. It was this guy from Denial. Remember the Denial team?
Yeah.
This guy, I don't remember his name. He was the first one that got approached. Hey, we want to do team skins. Like how much would you do it for? And he's like, oh, free.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when they came to me, he's like, hey, all the teams are doing it for free. And I remember calling either Tommy or Banks and saying, like, yo, don't do it for free.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we already committed to doing this. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it for free. And like, you guys are going to be the only team that's not on this. And, you know, like, you should totally reconsider. And I'm like, nah, you're not putting my logo on that. that. Like I need to pay my guys. You know what I'm saying? Like and at the time, all the way up until 2017, 90% of all the money that came in went to the players.
Okay.
You know, like look at my IRS statements, right? Like Hector and his family didn't make any significant amount of money, more than 120 for like almost a decade, right? Up until 2017.
Wow.
Because all of it, you know, if we caught a $250,000 deal, Nadeshot had to get a cut, period. And that was because of me. And he, for a very long time, like he was like, yo, you know, don't, you know, like if you need to keep some back, like keep some back. Like he was cool about it. But I'm like, nah. They're younger. I have to take care of them and that all. And I don't want to paint myself in a super good light, but that is the fact. So I told Activision, I'm like, I'll let you guys put the logo on, but you have to give me, and then I counted the people on my team. Boom, boom, boom. You got to give me 19 white versions of this thing, and nobody else can have them. Only 19 white versions of the exoskeleton. And you know, the black exoskeleton was released to everybody, but only OpTic people had.
Sick.
Yeah. So I'm like, even from there, I was making sure that we got something more than everybody else, because we're fighting for it. Like we're doing more than all of them. Not you guys included, but all of them.
Yeah, but we were not as focused in esports.
Yeah.
So you're right in that sense, for sure you were.
So I'm like, nah. I'm like, you got to give me something extra. I'm not gonna. I can't. It's unfair to our work. The NFL is 100 years old, give or take. Esports is 10. About to be 15 years old. I mean, truly, if you think about it, it wasn't up until like 2020 that esports actually became a solidified thing. Like there was the embers were glowing and the fire was like about to start, but it wasn't what it's going to be. You give us 100 years runway the way that you gave NBA and NFL and all that, undisturbed by external factors, and this thing is going to be bigger than all of it. Like the prediction's there, right? Like it's obvious to see. FaZe has more followers on Instagram than the Cowboys. What does that mean? That means that if you have a T-shirt and they have a T-shirt, who has a larger opportunity to sell that T-shirt? Nobody from Pennsylvania is going to buy Cowboys, right? Nobody from Australia is going to buy more Cowboys. But FaZe, global. That is global. You're not attached to nothing. The internet has no boundaries. It has no borders, no mountains, no rivers, nothing. It is for the taking. What you guys did, Atlanta FaZe, and still keeping FaZe in there instead of calling, you know, Atlanta whatever. Yeah. Like every other team did. That was the right thing to do. That was my recommendation to my board, right? At the time. I wasn't even part of that board. Yeah. But I'm like, you're not submitting OpTic Gaming to this league to take OpTic Gaming out of everywhere else. Yeah. You know, OpTic, like FaZe, is a wild animal that we don't know what it's going to do. It needs to be everywhere. It needs to develop into whatever it is it's going to be. We don't know what it is. Yeah. We have an idea of what we want it to be, but in the end, we don't know. Yeah. And for us to take it out of circulation and only keeping it in one spot, that's one of the reasons why I didn't go to when it resold from Infinite to the Immortals. That's one. I'm like, I'm not taking OpTic out of circulation and just putting it in one league. You know what I'm saying? Like, crazy, yeah. So anyway, it was just done wrong. And no matter how many times we raised our hands and said, this is wrong and this is why it's not gonna work, listen to the people that built it. You know what I'm saying? I think one of the things, again, you have your right to OpTic that nobody should be able to take away from you. But I think you probably have a secondary intention to kind of, like you have up to this point, everything we spoke about, to kind of put on and lead for the rest of the community. And I know that's driving you as well, trying to set kind of like a precedent for everybody. It's not just about you, I'm sure. It's not just about OpTic, I'm sure. Obviously, it's a big part of it, but I think you've had that. From the beginning, you have everyone's best interest in mind. How did you feel when somebody who came in as an accountant had more ownership than some of the people that made videos for you guys in the beginning? Yeah, no, trust me, that was the worst situation for me. Me specifically, I got stuck kind of in the middle of, like, you know, I have these FaZe members saying, why do I want more, you know, they want ownership. Understandably, you've been here for a decade. And I would talk to the CEO at the time, the board, and they'd be like, oh, we don't have enough. And you're right. I would be, you know, me being naive, the board's not going to approve giving it to someone for the last 10 years of work, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like trying to do the best I can. This FaZe member starts hating me. I'm getting cussed out by this guy. I have the best
in mind for him. He thinks that I don't. I go to the, weeks later, I see some guy get hired, and I find, look at finances, and I see, to your point, this guy has 300,000 shares, but they just told me they only have 75,000, whatever, for this pillar FaZe member, right? So you're right. It is an insane thing for me. Like, unfortunately, again, like I wasn't able, for many reasons or whatever the reason is, to fight the way you did.
No, dude,
I just never had the.
Don't blame yourself for something that you have no control over. Like we are not equipped.
Yeah.
Because we didn't go down that path. We went down a creative path that turned into something that everybody wanted to be by. You can't blame yourself for not knowing things, dude. Like
No. Yeah. I know.
It's hard to be the peacekeeper, which is what you were trying to be.
Yeah.
You were trying to be the voice of reason between corporate and that.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to tell the corporate people why creative is important, and it's impossible for you to tell them why people who have nothing to do with gaming are important.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ownership thing is the one thing that
rough,
always like.
Yeah.
That was the worst thing.
I said at the beginning, you got it taken away from you. You said that's not true. You sold it.
Yeah.
Can you speak about? I mean, let's just like go back to that point. You just mentioned how you were only making 120K a year max, right?
Yeah.
Right. You were taking a salary.
That was my channel and stuff, right?
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say
in some years included. Yeah.
Okay. So most of us, like for us at FaZe, most of our income came from, not most of it, almost all of it. 90% of it was from our YouTube and the brand deals we got or whatever, separate from building FaZe. With FaZe, right, I'll speak for myself and the other founders, we just built it and just thought about at the end, we'll figure out money. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, dozens of people came in, to your point, got equity, they cashed out. I had someone tell me a week ago, someone he knows made millions off of FaZe. I'm like, I don't know how that could be the case, right? But for us, I've gotten a salary since I started working full-time and I stopped doing content, right? But for example, people think we sold when our stock went public. Like,
you couldn't.
The way it works, we were locked for what?
Period.
Yeah, like 6 months, a year. By the time we were able to sell, the stock was 90% decrease. We never sold to this point, right? Because one, it's hard to sell. I mean, it's it's FaZe. It's just like it's OpTic.
Unless it's worth it.
Exactly. And, if it was worth it, I would do it. So that's the thing. For example, if I was able to sell at the price that we went public at, I would have definitely done it.
Yeah.
With all, right? But like by the time there was nothing. So for us, like we waited. We felt like we were there. We were being told by everyone we're going to.
Of course.
And we never got that moment. We've never sold a penny. We never made money off of it, right? For you did sell OpTic. And then, unfortunate circumstances, you kind of. Can you just break down the whole thing, I guess, instead of me trying to...
In 2017, when everybody was getting investments, I was approached about a sponsorship. I walked through this very building when I came to here to looking for the investors to put in. And I wanted to get an investment enough to give my players a raise so that they wouldn't have to go somewhere else. But the full acquisition came about. They put a number in front of me that as a husband, as a father who has sacrificed a lot, who hasn't made that much, it was a dumb number, right? I'm like, of course. I'm like, yeah, and I fought for that until the very end to make sure that I got that figure. Once I got that figure, I paid Scump, I paid Big Timer, I paid Embos, I paid I gave, even though they didn't have equity on paper, I felt as they did.
Okay.
So
you're the only one with equity at that point.
Yeah, it was because I didn't know any better. Like,
yeah. No, but I mean it's interesting because. Again, I know, I'm sure the number's not public, but it was a big amount of money.
Yeah.
Like type of money that could set up your family for you're good. Okay, so you sold it and you got paid. Mm-hmm. And what was it? Did you sold it, I'm assuming in transition to
90% I sold.
You sold 90% and you were going to still be running the company?
No. At the time, Jay, who's was a very close friend of mine, 12 years. Since then, we've had a falling out, but I don't have any ill will towards him, and I hope, we're just different life paths.
Yeah.
But I told him, I'm like, yo, I don't want to run this thing. I want to make videos. Like, I gave up 2 years of being a YouTuber to build this thing. So the income that I was getting from my channel was no longer there because I was solely focused on this and managing that thing. It's impossible to do both. But then I was wrong because years later, I vlogged every single day for 2 years straight while still doing my job. And at the end of that, when the money came in and we all moved down here, I had said no to board seats. I said no board because I didn't know what You know,
Yeah,
I didn't know what it entailed, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have the right guy in place to manage this thing to go to where it needs to go. I'm gonna be a content creator. I'm gonna be the best content creator in OpTic. So that's what I wanted to do. Still to this day, that's all I wanted.
And
to
I
do.
completely understand that too. Probably sick of the managerial things, and again, you sacrificed doing that for so long.
Dude, I walked into the office the first time that I walked into the new office where the Infinite Esports was operating. I walked in and I see a flag of another team that they had acquired hanging proudly in an OpTic office, and I'm like, that icked me. I'm like, what is this? Get out of here, right?
Yeah.
And I got mad at that. And then I walk in, I said 90 people working, and I'm like, it's only been me for 10 years. Why do we need 90 people? Give me their salary. I'll do their work the way I have been.
Yeah.
It was super quick the way that thing went down, man. Like it was just bad strategy after bad strategy, and I laid it all out, right. Like one of the businesses was it was an esports academy that was not supposed to be an esports academy. They created this farm system in which they would house athletes, and then the theory was that they were going to sell them to teams, and that's how they were going to make money. My thought was, no, we're going to create the Pop Warner of esports, in which moms are going to go drop off their kids, and they're going to take a class from Jack Courage Dunlop, who was working for us at the time, and they're going to play Fortnite with them, and that's the thing. They turn it into sports immediately. But anyway, so the question was, how did that come about, and how it ended up?
Well, I was just my first question was if you got paid, which thankfully you did. So you got paid. You paid out all those guys, even though they didn't have equity.
Yeah.
So they all probably made pretty good money. So you were 100% owner at the time?
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, I mean, obviously we all of us were always split. You know, there's four of us versus you're by yourself. But
it's easier to make decisions.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And it's the right one.
I can't imagine. Yeah,
it was the right one.
Yeah.
I couldn't let. Listen, I checked in with my boys in every single turn.
Yeah.
Right. And at that time there was no thought of selling. Right. I didn't have 100% of this thing, knowing that I was going to get what I got.
You weren't thinking
know what I'm
about it
saying?
like that, yeah. And you just said how you were giving them 90% of the money.
They were making all the money.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like they were getting. I wasn't getting paid. They were getting paid along the entire way.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? They were making their salaries and whatever. I think I did it the right way. You know.
No, 100%. It's just it's crazy for me because I can't even tell you how many different people own FaZe now. It's sad. It sucks. It's unfortunate how little I know about a lot of this stuff. But from the early days, we had someone come in and again, bad decisions were made, but just got taken here. The big piece of it got taken here, and a big piece got taken there. Then the investors, and it was very, for me. That's why I'm shocked that you had 100% for that long. And again, like you said, you weren't really selling, so they came to you, and you couldn't resist the number.
I could have resisted it, but it would have been dumb for me to resist it. In fact, I think that it was the best decision that I've ever made, because once I had that much money in my account, it made me mobile. And the deal that I caught, because they wanted me out so bad, then they wanted to take this new thing. They said yes to all of my requests.
But going into it, did they want you to work on it still, or did they?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But they didn't want me to be in any leadership position.
So you kind of had like a handshake thing with them that you'll still
it was
be
on
able
paper.
You'll still be able to be the creative.
I said, picture a sailing boat. I'm all the way at the top, pointing in the direction that we should be going, and everybody else is going to be working.
And they're all like, yeah, okay, of course.
They wanted it because they wanted to enact their vision of what this thing was. And I didn't find that out until later, but it doesn't matter. It was my decision. OpTic didn't get taken from me, and the moment that I felt that it was going wrong, I started fighting for it. You know what I'm saying? Again, this is not something that is ever not the center of every single one of my decisions.
So how did you feel seeing it for the first time going in a direction that you weren't you weren't steering the ship? It was going in a way that you were against. How did that? I mean, that must have been after all these years, all the sacrifices.
At first, no, because I'm like, let's give it a shot. Okay. I'm a big fan of the "I told you so" without saying "I told you so." But I make it a point. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this because of you. Whatever result happens, I'm with you. It's our decision.
Yeah.
Right. But it's the wrong one. I'm telling you right now, this is not gonna work out.
Yeah.
Right. It's not gonna work out. And the good people that invested into OpTic the first time, because they are good people. They're not, these businessmen that I came across on the first transaction were gentlemen. They were nothing bad to say about them.
Okay.
The people in between, though, is what got in the way in the end.
And okay, so
and again, even those people were blinded by the situation too, because they themselves didn't know what they were getting themselves into.
No, 100%. I mean, I think we had a similar thing. We had some good investors came in, again, they just maybe had a different idea of how things would play out. It's not always the people, but like you said earlier, like businessmen will be businessmen. And when it gets to a point where things have to get cutthroat, that's when things really start going south and people are burning their money, and the niceness and the friendships kind of go away, and it's a rough thing to swallow.
Dude, businessmen will cut your throat if it's best for their business.
100%.
But the second that you yourself become a businessman and you do the same thing that they would do, whoa, dude, I thought we were boys. What's up with the feelings and feelings and feelings? And that's the number one thing that I've learned, and the number one thing that I tell any entrepreneur out there is do not be afraid of being a businessman with businessmen. And I told the crowd when all this started happening, I'm like I told the fans in the green wall and everybody in esports that was paying attention to what happened, you shouldn't be too involved, or you shouldn't. And I understand that the passion for OpTic is there, but what businessmen do to businessmen is a completely different sport than when a player does something to another teammate.
Yeah.
What businessmen do to businessmen because of business reasons, that's the sport that they choose to play. That is the choice that I choose to play. And it is a cutthroat one.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be that, but if I have to be that because something's wrong, then I'm going to be that.
Yeah. I think that,
and you should not be ashamed of doing the same thing that they would do and sleep like babies that same night.
I think that is one of it's unfortunate it's at the expense of FaZe, to be honest. But one of the biggest lessons I learned, one of the biggest positive takeaways that I take from this experience is that I look at people the way that I assume people are gonna act with me the same way I try to act with people, which was the biggest mistake I made. And it didn't help being the youngest person in the room with all these guys, right? We're 20, 21 years old. You have this, this guy's a former Apple employee. This guy's a former, I realize how little that stuff matters now. Not like in an egotistical way, but I don't care anymore. Nobody can impress me with their background or whatever. Like, to your point, like when you just know something, and someone tries to convince you otherwise because of their background in this industry or that industry, it's like, I had to, from the bad experiences, I've now gained that confidence of like, if it's about FaZe or about this, I don't respectfully want to hear your opinion. You cannot convince me that I'm wrong. And, we were just kind of in the vulnerable position for so long. And like, I just felt like, okay, I'm only 21. This guy's 50 years old. He has all this experience. Those mind games worked on us a lot, unfortunately.
Some of those things are true, but
it is too. Again, and to your point, I'm also a little different from the other guys. Like, I feel like some parts of it were taken away from us. But to your point, I feel the same about you. We made decisions. They were just bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other guys completely kind of look at it as if like we got completely taken advantage of.
If somebody tells you, as with them, hey, we're going to do this, and they don't do that, then they are right in feeling that. Whether or not they made the initial decision to go with them.
No, you're right, yeah.
It's a 50-50 thing, man. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I mean is that the number one thing that I've learned, the number one thing that I suggest is that if you are operating in business, you can go in it as a creative to solve problems, but you have to put on a suit in theory, and be that businessman, because other businessmen are going to take it, not advantage, but they're just going to do what businessmen do. And that's sport. The sport of business is sport. And there are players on both sides, and they're each trying to grasp for something. The ideological person that becomes a businessman is the one that is out of place, because he is there for more than just the money. Mm-hmm. And that's where you come in. That's where I come in. That's where every creative that has ever touched the face of the internet is going through. Period.
Very powerful, man. And I honestly, I'm so happy that you have it. You got it back after all this. I know it's still things happen that you're not happy with, and I hope at the end of it, at the end of all of this, you get your right.
Until this thing is in the hands of those who built it fully, something's not right in my universe.
To go back to that conversation then, right? Like when that started going south with those guys, It wasn't really working. You kind of took a risk. You told them, I'm with you. It's going to be wrong. Forgive me for I don't have the timeline fully in my head, because there was that sale, then they sold it a second time.
To Immortals.
And you were not a part of that sale.
Correct.
So you left. Can you explain what happened there in between?
They obviously saw that things weren't going the way that they should, and they sought out a partner somewhere else in Los Angeles, the Immortals team.
Yeah.
And then they had a conversation. They made a deal before talking to Hector.
Okay.
I had a meeting here with the people that bought it the second time. It was everywhere too, like $100 million transactions. Like ESPN, my cousins are selling me, and I don't know how to tell my cousins. I'm like, yeah, like that might seem cool on paper, but I'm no longer there. You know?
Yeah.
And that was the toughest decision I've ever had to make, to not be who you are, to say to yourself, you're not OpTic Hecz, as OpTic Hecz. It was something. You know, luckily I was able to partner with Andy Miller, who's a gentleman, good businessman, obviously. But again, if OpTic is a part of the equation, then I'm always going to do what's best for OpTic. And when we told them that we weren't going to go, it was a very simple thing. I even offered to say, hey, once this transaction goes through between Infinite and Immortals, sell me the logo, okay? Because I'm not coming with.
Yeah.
And if I don't go with, the players aren't going to go with.
Yeah.
And if the players don't go with, and I don't go with, the green wall's not coming with. And if the green wall's not coming with, the sponsors aren't coming with.
Yeah.
Sell it to me. And they're like, can't. Anyway, a year later, the opportunity came to me that the thing wasn't going the way that it was going. There was a lot.
Sorry, in between. Really sorry.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you
no,
joined.
please.
You joined a different org.
Yeah, NRG.
So can you explain what that was like?
Yeah, well,
I remember seeing that and I was shocked.
Yeah, well,
it's just crazy to see. Like you said, you're OpTic Hecz, right? I can't imagine. I've thought about personally when things have gone wrong with FaZe, like. It's so hard to just detach, no matter how bad things are. It's so hard to think of a world where I'm not going to be in FaZe. As bad as it was. Similar to you, it's a $1 billion valuation. Everyone's celebrating. Brother, I've never made a penny off of any of that $1 billion. You don't know how toxic it is and all these motherfuckers running. So I completely understand. But you actually left is something that I can't imagine doing. Not only that, but joining NRG. So what was that opportunity?
Well, the opportunity was to still be in Call of Duty. I wanted Seth to continue his career. I wanted Formal to continue his career, and he was coming back. So like these conversations were happening, and we were the last franchise to go in. And if I hadn't found the partnership with Andy to start Chicago Huntsmen, then what I would have done is I would have paid Krim and whoever was on my team at the time, Scump included, to play in Challengers. And we weren't going to be a part of the big league, and we were going to be in Challengers, and we were going to do the same that we do every single day, which is create compelling content for people to follow. And my goal was to make Challengers more popular than the big league.
It would have been.
Of course.
Been
common sense points that it would have been. Not saying that the league wouldn't have had the viewership,
no, that's
but
crazy.
it wouldn't have been bigger than what me and my team were going to bring to that.
That would have been
Luckily, the Chicago Huntsmen came about, and I spoke to other people that wanted to partner with me. But the Chicago Huntsmen one was the one that put us in the best position to continue to compete.
You know, I think it's crazy to say, right? But we even had a conversation about trying for FaZe to, that's when FaZe was at its peak financially or whatever, right? We talked about FaZe maybe acquiring OpTic, which would have been
the players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would have been crazy.
Yeah.
And then again.
And Hecz.
Yeah, and I remember sitting with you in the office, right? And then again, a couple of years later, we kind of had the other conversation, which it's just funny how crazy the roller coaster is. But at some point, seeing a FaZe OpTic thing would have been. I mean, we got some collabs and stuff.
Did a collab.
The collab we did was awesome. Hey, me and you really did that. I mean, obviously all the teams, but
there are people that worked and there are people that showed up. We worked.
Yeah, we planned it. That was fun. That was a really cool thing. We did it again this year with 100 Thieves. We got to do that every year, by the way. Like I forgot who I was talking to about it. We got to do that, I think, yearly. And we should open it, not even for money, like, okay, let's make money off it, but for the fans. Like, when I was around that room, just looking at everyone in that room, like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And, like, we need to have that open for people.
Agreed.
That was
Agreed.
really cool. But, okay, in between, though, right? I think that was maybe before you did the NRG thing. Mm-hmm. Must have been, right?
4 years?
Maybe before. I'm saying when we talked about FaZe.
It was right on the on the thing.
So after that, you tried to buy OpTic back, but they sold it to...
No. When they sold it, I tried. That's the story that I told you. I'm like, when this transaction goes, sell me OpTic,
the logo,
and the socials,
and they said no,
and
they sold it to the other company.
Yeah. Well, no, the other company. So the Immortals is the company that bought OpTic.
You were trying to get okay, sorry.
And that's why I told Immortals, I'm like, when this transaction goes by, keep the league spot, which is what you're after.
Yeah.
The League of Legends spot, keep that, and then sell me this. You're gonna make not only you're making money.
Yeah.
At that point, and it didn't happen. But yeah, at that time, that's when we met. The opportunity that came with the NRG. Us going to NRG was the Chicago Huntsmen, and Chicago Huntsmen was this was the Hecz quarters.
Yeah.
And as long as me and my boys were together, then the fans were going to be there for us, right? Because external circumstances are external circumstances, and nobody can foresee the future. Why would I think that something bad's going to happen if I do this? You know what I'm saying? Like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, there's possibility that something bad can happen and that this can go south, but at least my family's going to be taken care of after 10 years of putting in the work and doing that. And I'm not saying that we didn't live a good life. We did throughout the entirety of it. Us leaving, us going with you guys was going to be like, that would have been super cool, I think. Just because I think I would have been able to help you guys navigate that I didn't know you guys were going to be going through in the future. Having had gone through it myself.
You know, the way I look at it is like, I'm glad it didn't happen because then you would have got caught up in the. But you're right. After this conversation, maybe you would have saved. You would have saved a lot of stuff.
Maybe.
The problem is at that point it was a little too far gone already.
Yeah. You know what's crazy?
All the hands already in. All the lawsuits already settled.
Yeah.
All the ownership already dispersed. But
Banks called me the week that you guys were going to ring the bell.
Yeah.
At NASDAQ, and he's like, "Yo, come be with us. Like come and ring the bell with us. Like come on." And I was like, I had already planned a trip somewhere else, but otherwise I would have been there with you guys to do that because that is monumental. The thing is this, okay? FaZe's valuation of $2 billion may have been too much, but the $1 billion valuation was not out of the realm of possibilities. And the brand itself is strong enough to be that. But unfortunately, it was being managed by and I don't know these people and I don't know their names, so I'm not talking about anyone.
I will. They're all morons and I hate them.
So that was the problem. The business side, and I said it in the documentary, and I didn't even know it was at 30 for 30. They just asked me to say, yeah, we're making a FaZe documentary. You want to talk about it? I was like, yeah. And I sat there, I'm like, the problem with FaZe isn't the brand, the loyalty of the fans or the people in it.
Yeah.
The problem with it is a business problem because people that came into this thing have their own vision to about this one thing they know nothing about. If I use this thing every single day.
Yeah.
Ask me to explain to you how a signal goes somewhere and a conversation happens. I don't know how that happens. I don't know any of that, right? So it's the same concept when you try to do something like you weren't there in the beginning. You know what I'm saying?
I've spent enough time thinking about what went wrong, whatever. But to your point, right, and what we were saying earlier, like I've gained a lot of confidence seeing how things played out. To your kind of I told you so. Just like, you know what? Like I maybe thought this guy knew, even though I felt in my heart that this is wrong. And I'm like feeling like I'm doing the right thing, trying my best. Just the way it all played out, it is what it is. There's good to take from it. It's a blessing in a way that I'm sure I'll see in 10 years, hopefully. The whole situation would have been crazy if you joined. I think things would have been different. It's unfortunate, but thankfully in your story, and us too, right? We've kind of come back into power. Yeah, that's for sure, right? Banks is completely managing it. Again, the ownership is one thing. We'll see where that goes in the future and how things really shake out. I still have, we're very happy where we are compared to where we were a year ago. Where we were a year ago, it's like, dude, this is like rock bottom in every way, and none of us can even wear our logo, right?
But if you would have started a different logo, then the pressure would have been applied. And then they would have been like, well, this is worth it.
What sucks is I feel like everyone was just like so burnt at that point. But you did that. You competed against OpTic. I can't imagine what that felt like.
First time OpTic got booed.
I can't imagine how happy or how weird or what the feelings were when you're seeing OpTic get booed.
I was sad, dude. It was the inaugural season of the Call of Duty League. They had just given the players their player contracts like the night before. No opportunity for them to share it with anyone to make sure that it's good. And then our first match as Huntsmen is against OpTic.
Oh my gosh.
and everybody in the league is expecting that OpTic is going to be OpTic. And when they come out,
they expected them to have.
When they came out and the boos started flying, I was like, whoa. But I'm like, whoa. Because I'm like, that's the first time OpTic had ever been booed like that. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, there's booers, right? But not an entire arena booing. And everybody was in disbelief. They're like, what the? This is not in. And then the Huntsmen come out and, it points to the fact that the people are the people that people get behind. Yeah. The logo is just a representation of those people, And as long as you understand that, nothing is going to get in the way between the relationship that you have built with the people that consume your content on a daily basis. Look, I've been doing YouTube videos since 2006, definitely 2008 for sure. So by now, people would have known what type of person I am, right? I have had aside from business things, like I haven't had any drama where I'm doing, that we've all seen, and you know what I'm saying. So people know what I'm about, right? I'm an open book. I try to be. It's exhausting to not be who you are. So my relationship with the Green Wall is mutual. It's an understanding. Like I'm this person. If I ever point towards not being this person, hate me, right? But you know who I am the same way people know who you are. You know what you stand for. So that is the power. That relationship is the power.
I guess just to wrap this conversation up, but like that is the thing that disappointed me the most. Is like it could have been so successful for us if the people on the other side just had better intentions, or believed in everything you just said, believed in that concept that it's not just the logo, it's the people. Dude, I would hear C-level executives talking about we don't need the founders. Like I'd hear stuff like that. I'm in the room. I guess they're talking about Rain when he's in their eyes causing them problems, or Banks like they're too difficult. We don't need them. FaZe is huge. You got here 2 months ago. You don't even know what FaZe is. And they're saying that. And it's just like, if people just came to the table, and to be fair, and I always said this to the other guys, like a lot of the FaZe members also didn't come with good intentions talking to the corporate. When we're in that position, that's why it was my perspective was just like, we're here. Let's try to work together and be one team. But it just never happens. Because like you said, a lot of people, they don't believe what you just said. They don't believe the logo. They believe it's the logo. They don't believe it's the people, and they believe everyone's replaceable, and this logo is all we need. And if I know what to do with this logo, and it's just like, it's just wrong.
Dude, they try to get rid of Scump in the team. They try to get OpTic out of Call of Duty. And that's the day that I said, this is, all right, it's time to take my gloves off. This. And I went in there, I'm like, crazy. If you get rid of the team, if Seth's not here, I'm not here either. I'm like, that's just, he's like literally almost like my stepchild. You know what I'm saying? Now my brother, obviously. But I'm like, hell no, I'm not gonna let my boy go out. That's
that's OpTic. You and other than you,
absolutely.
Scump is OpTic. Other than you, that's
the face.
Other half.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. That's just like.
And they didn't want to work it out with him because they didn't like his agent. And I'm like, guys, give me 24 hours. Let me talk to the agent. They're gonna sign the contract. And we're gonna continue this thing. They didn't even give me 24 hours to talk to him. They sent an email. He's like, "Hey, we're gonna move the team." And I'm like, "You move Scump, I'm out of here." And that's
so stupid. People are just dumb, man. It shocks you. Like, how are these people in this position? Because they're not smart people. The decisions people make, they're not smart. I'll just see the agent thing. It reminded me, like, in like 2018. I don't know if I've ever talked about this. It's been mentioned, but like AMP, I found AMP in like 2018. They were already big at the time. I'm not acting like I discovered a small channel. They were huge at the time. We were still bringing in a lot of people. And I messaged everyone in our chat and like, hey, I think we should think about picking up AMP. We ended up getting in a group chat with them. Me, Banks, Tommy, all the AMP guys on call, FaceTime, everybody in AMP's down, everybody in FaZe is down. Let's do it. Where did it go wrong? The agents. But it was not like literally we had a guy on our side who I hate for other reasons now. And I don't care if you see, I actually like, anyways, human reasons, again, just scumbag, like for no reason. Anyways, this guy literally lost the deal over some ego. Like he just didn't like the other agent based on their old relationship. And it's like, no, I don't want to give them imagine, we weren't even going to pay, like it was, they wanted like the guy wanted a minimum guarantee or something. No, just like something stupid. And he's just like, nah. He just was so stuck on like, he wanted to win the battle. Never signed AMP. Again, I'm happy it didn't happen because look at them now, and I feel like they would have got caught up in RBS. That's the way I look at it. But like, it's just stupid. Just like it's just one guy that's just like, nah, we're not doing that. And it's just like, dude. In the end, you ended up buying OpTic back. So to I guess end that conversation, is there anything? Was it just so bad that they just wanted to get rid of it, or like, how did you get the opportunity to get it back?
They were super cool about it. I have nothing bad to say about that group. Obviously, during the tough time, like we had our disagreements, but it was never anything disrespectful. I'm a hard-headed dude. They are hard-headed businessmen, and in the end, cooler heads prevailed, and they presented me with something that I've always wanted. The reason that I made the moves that I did was because I wanted OpTic. The reason I left OpTic is because I wanted OpTic, and I knew that if we weren't there, that was the only thing that was going to prove that if it's not in our hands, it's worthless. Yeah. So they had their own reasons. I don't necessarily know which ones, and I didn't care. Yeah. All I know is that the opportunity came about for me to get OpTic back, and as I've been saying, like nothing was going to get in the way of that. And the league had to approve that because at that time, I think the league co-owned the logo. It's a web of
crazy.
of stuff,
Yeah.
right? So which is why I am fighting as hard as I am for what I'm doing. Unfortunately for everyone, I am a very, very worthy adversary in whatever fight I want to get into, and especially when it comes to this thing, because it's not just me. It's hundreds of thousands of people that I'm
fighting for. Yeah.
in a sense. Don't get me wrong.
No,
Like
you're 100%. There's so many people that are so emotionally attached to it.
yeah, it's just,
I'm sure so many people were genuinely.
Yeah.
I can confidently say that there are fans that felt very similar to how you felt throughout that whole process. I'm not gonna say the same, obviously.
Yeah.
But a lot closer to how you felt than
course.
people probably think.
Of
Like
course.
that it really bothered them on a daily basis when they
Dude.
see it. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's very important to people.
You think the green wall was cool with booing OpTic?
Yeah, no.
Nah. So it would have been really easy for me to just take what I made and just lived a happy life.
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
wouldn't have been a happy life at all. It would have been torture. It would have been what it was for that 1 year when I was not OpTic Hecz.
which is clearly your identity, the most important thing to
Absolutely.
you. That's, I hope that we will always see OpTic Hecz and you will have everything you want with that logo because you deserve it, man. For what you've done for it, obviously, you did everything, but for what you've done for the scene too.
Yeah.
It's
I'm surrounded by a group of people that also have the same passion for it, and without
amazing.
without Nadeshot, without Scump, without Big Timer, without Embos, without Maniac, without Hitch, without Formal, I'll sit here and name
everyone, yeah.
name them all, but like Hector wouldn't be where he's at, and OpTic wouldn't mean what it does if it wasn't
Yeah.
for them. So
I think-
like, full props to all of my people.
100%, and just hearing how you've ran it shows why you have so much loyalty. I'm from the fans, from your players. Like, you've really taken care of everyone. I'm sure that's something you're proud of, and you should be.
They probably want more, you know what I'm saying? But I'm kidding.
As humans, I think we always do, but I'm sure they all have nothing but good things to say about their experience here. So thank you for giving a lot of that insight on it. I know you spoke about a lot of this publicly, but see the story kind of in order from beginning of your life till now. It's very inspiring, and a lot of it makes more sense. You understand. People can understand a lot where the passion comes from, where even selling it, right? Like your wife was like totally fine with you. Like she made those sacrifices. So like you said, for you to not accept it, all these things, it's very good context. I appreciate you sharing a lot of that. But outside of OpTic, you've invested in a golf company.
Sort
right?
of.
Okay. A fishing company.
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain in any other investments that you've made?
Yeah. So the companies that I'm involved with that have notoriety is Googan Squad. I didn't invest any money in it, but
Okay.
I was there early on the advisory board. Rob Turkla, as I said, he was a UMG guy.
Okay.
He founded UMG. He was a tournament
wow.
guy, and he wanted to do the same thing. I used to take him fishing with one of the reasons why we had 2 events in Orlando was because he and I wanted to go fishing in Lake Okeechobee. So once he started, like I helped guide, so it's an advisory role. The same thing with Good, and it goes to show, right? Like if you think about the OpTic blueprint and how it worked for FaZe, how it works for 100 Thieves, how it works, and obviously 100 Thieves has Nadeshot in it, which is a co-author of the blueprint in a way.
Yeah.
That worked in gaming. So for this same strategy to work in a complete opposite field as it was in the outdoors and hunting world, where you're not indoors, you're completely outdoors, and that. Like that gave us confidence to say, me and my partners here at Scoreboard, we got lucky. Scoreboard is comprised of this guy named Brian, this guy named Nahid, 2 of my best business mentors, my second life business mentors, because I had my early mentors in Sundance DiGiovanni and Michael Sepso, and a 4th guy who came in later. His name is Matt Kendrick. Matt Kendrick was the CEO of Googan, and he took them to a $150 million valuation. We had our exit and all that stuff. Still involved in a way, but it's same thing that's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. And then so he left Googan, and then our friend Nahid had this, and Brian too, right? Like had this like, yo, like what's next? What are we gonna do next? And I'm always like, dogs. Puppies are a business that's wide open. There's nobody who's taking advantage. Like there's some I can give you all of them right now, but I want to reserve some for myself. But golf was a popular thing.
Yeah.
And we came across this dude named Garrett, GM Golf, one of the most popular, most insane personalities, not just in golf, but just in general. His approach to content, and it was a matter of putting that group together and letting them do what they do. Right. My advice came from early on. The hard work and the strategy. I'll give full and utter credit to Matt Kendrick, genius. The only one of the only people that I would allow to have an insight and a pointing direction of what OpTic can do. Like, that guy's a good friend of mine, and I put him up against any other CEO out there because he's done it. He's done it twice, right? Because if you look at Good and the amount of work that those guys have done, the amount of hard work that they've put in, what they stand for, like it's family-friendly mega brand that is, and that. So yeah, Googan, Good, and Pine Park.
So what Scoreboard is that?
Ventures.
Like a venture?
It's just like a pre-seed company that puts money into things.
So that's something you founded with these guys?
Yeah, with these guys.
And you just invested in a bunch of different companies, or just
yeah?
Those for
So
now?
we have a couple of them under the portfolio.
Cool.
None that are ready to be talked about. We own a soccer. We co-own a soccer team in London, the Alfreton Town FC. We've invested into that. We're always looking for new things to do. The last couple of years have been very busy, so we've only been focusing on that. They've only been focusing on that. Obviously, I have my own things, and they have their own things. They're businessmen, after all. But yeah, no, Kendrick and his the way that he runs his businesses is a stellar man.
Okay, amazing.
One of my favorite people.
Like you said, you didn't necessarily invest, but the knowledge you're bringing is,
of course,
it's obviously it's like an investment.
Proven knowledge.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what. Listen, when Pine Park does what Pine Park is going to do, that's going to be 4 times that we as a concept have created something that works. I mean, in gaming, it's really easy to say, oh, this DNA comes from like this very early strategy that these guys put together. But outside of that, think about that. Call of Duty snipers, as I was saying earlier, like that influence from the early snipers in Call of Duty, like has influenced the outdoor world and the way that because Googan was like the first group of guys that created the thing. Think of them as the face or the OpTic of fishing. After that, all the other dares and whatever other sniping clans out there, they all spawned after that.
Yeah,
Good, same thing, right? Like when we took that strategy and implemented into that, like they revolutionized an entire industry, and content started to, like, it's as big as it is today because of the work that those dudes put in following a strategy that has roots in Call of Duty sniping.
I think it's the same, you could say, for G Fuel and the sponsors that came in too. It's like the brands were built on the strategies that we've made. I mean, not trying to take full credit for how big they've gotten, but like, you're right. Like,
no, you guys added something to this thing that I wouldn't have been able to think about. Like, because
I'm not saying that necessarily we did it, but I think your point of the thing that has worked in our industry, when other people have kind of adopted certain practices.
Traditional sports and their social strategies, man.
Yeah.
How many athletes have podcasts now?
Yeah.
And why do they have podcasts? Why did the NCAA stop taking advantage of these athletes? Why? Because one dude wanted to stream on Twitch, and he couldn't make money because he couldn't use his likeness.
It's crazy.
Gaming, specifically YouTube gaming, has changed and revolutionized everything. Everything.
I think I used to be so confused as to when NBA players would like reach out and like they want to stream. I'm like, this guy wants to stream. He wants to make, like, I've heard about very famous NBA players, like their agent would say, like, when they get literally one of them told me on a call, when they get a $3,000 streaming thing, they're so excited about a brand deal for streaming. They'll sign a $100 million contract. It's like they're not as excited. It's very interesting, but passion drives everything. Yeah,
and it's only gonna get better. Everybody that's watching now are going to become athletes, are going to become billionaires on their own. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a matter of letting this thing evolve into what it can without any external influence.
Yep. Yeah. Did you, outside of that, a lot of people like that I've spoken to, Roman Atwood, Rug, spoke about real estate. Do you have any real estate? Do you do real estate investments?
We do. Yeah. My wife has that portfolio.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. And I know you guys have done books too in the past.
Yeah. 2014. New York Times bestselling authors. me, FaZe, Midnight, Nadeshot, Scump.
It's amazing.
Big timer.
You've done a lot of different things. It's really cool. You take OpTic everywhere. Like, it's not just OpTic. Obviously, it's you, Hecz, right? Your personality online. I like how you kind of bring it everywhere with you. You're not afraid to kind of...
First org to sponsor a UFC fighter.
Yeah,
Joe Lausen.
I remember seeing that in the New York house, and I was like, that's crazy. I saw the OpTic on his shorts, the OpTic logo.
Yeah.
Hey, you've broken so many, like,
yeah,
barriers.
and then obviously NASCAR is the thing that we've done recently, and that's just a partnership with a good friend of mine, Bill Anthony, and I know him because he was the lawyer at Infinite Esports, and we always remained.
That's
I mean, there was a period of time, like for 3 years, we didn't talk to each other, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, I'm at NASCAR," and I'm like, the logo has never gone that fast. I want to see our logo go 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, run that.
That's amazing. What is your current day in life? Because you're making content now a lot more.
Yeah.
You never really stopped making content. I mean, maybe you said for those 2 years, but like
personal content. I'm always in
Yeah.
OpTic content.
Yeah.
I consider that like a must, right? Because I'm here for the team, and I sit on the watch party with Scump. Other people are more suited to be on there, but he wants me on there, so I'm on there. I'm a content creator, period. I am a creative person. I am an artist before I am anything else. This business thing that I happened to stumble onto, it was an accident. I was never supposed to be a corporate dude, as much as they try to put me in a suit. And I'm not saying anyone in particular, just
just
the universe.
Yeah.
I've always been able to be slippery enough to get out of the way. You know what I'm saying? And going back to you not being impressed with people and their backgrounds and all that, I feel the same exact way.
Yeah.
Especially now, it's like, you got money, I got money. They're like, what? You got more. Like, who can you get into an argument with over that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, even I have more followers than you. Oh, cool, you're a better influencer than me. All right. It's like, are you more gangster? We can talk about that too.
I love it. You got a lot of confidence, which is great. You need it.
Make your ego your amigo.
I like that.
It is gift confidence, like creativity, is put into your DNA for you to use to your advantage. And although I didn't have it at first growing up, the second that I believed in myself, that I was funny or that I had something to offer, I just carried through that entire life. As long as you don't let this thing fool you, like this overconfidence fool you, then you just utilize everything. If you're muscular, use your muscles. Why wouldn't you use the same mentality towards anything else that you do?
So day to day, are you mainly creating content now, or are you still running OpTic?
Meetings, man.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I do have like a really, really good team around me on the corporate side. Obviously a person that I trust in Peterman, OpTic Ice, the guy that did the server. Yeah, I just have good people right now. Like from a team player perspective, Paige has done an incredible job of infiltrating people that don't trust anyone, which are the players, and that obviously Roger. Hitch, obviously, like I have to mention Hitch because he understands OpTic more than he started as a fan, loves it. Yeah. So him guiding some of the content is good.
Yeah.
The creative direction of everything that we do comes from this brain, but I share the responsibility with a lot of people.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to have a team that you trust around you.
It took a
That's
while.
the most important thing. Yeah. Outside of everything we spoke about, finances, all that. A lot of sometimes it has an impact on your personal life. I'm just curious, I guess, with you, you're very public. Everything about you is on. Have you had, I guess, has there been some negatives that came with, like you said, right? People are sending you articles of, look how much money, people think maybe you have more money than you have. And a lot of people have that. It can brew problems with family, with friends. Have you had that experience?
Of course.
Yeah.
More money, more problems, Yeah. But listen, I'd rather have those problems.
Yeah.
It's you don't know what you're prepared for until you're faced with the adversity. No matter if it's a small one, big one, family, business, friendships, relationships. Like it's a lot to manage, especially when you want to do good by everyone.
Yep.
Just because, not because they deserve it, not because they are entitled to it, but just because. That's when it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned earlier how you haven't gone back to your hometown because you're famous, right? And she's worried about you. I mean, so there's sacrifices that you kind of have to make. But I'm sure you're, like you said, you're happy to make those sacrifices for the life you're living.
My wife and I take care of my parents. My parents are good. My daughter's healthy. My 7 dogs are healthy.
7 is insane.
My turtle's good. My bonsais are thriving. My friends are thriving. You know, nothing when that is when all of your and not everything's perfect, right? There are some things that I would give my right hand for to make better.
Yeah.
But as long as like the base is settled, there's no fight that you can't fight. There's no fight that you can't fight.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a good perspective because it's easy to get caught up in the things that do go wrong. Even if everything's going wrong and there's one thing going wrong, a lot of people have that trouble of getting caught up on that.
The amount of people that were like, yo, you know, they can outspend you forever, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but what choice do we have?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And they also look at that from their perspective, right? Maybe you see, they see it from a very limited perspective when I can see the entire table and know the word for word, history for history thing that happened. Yeah, it's easy to fight those battles when everything around you, all your friends are your friends and they're loyal to you, all your people, all your relationships are good, or the majority of them are good. I think that it's easier for you to stand up for yourself in hopes for a better future.
Amazing. And I mean, again, your whole life is OpTic online. You've not really hidden anything. I think one thing is very interesting. I've always seen you talk about your wife, right? Jude, online.
Yeah.
And speaking to you right now, I understand a little more now, right? Like you said she's your first investor, right? Like all the stuff she sacrificed, all the input, she's helping in the house with these guys, right?
She helped with OpTic in the beginning, like for the first 10 years. It wasn't until we sold that she stopped being like a manager of sorts in OpTic. Like if you ask Nadeshot, Scump, ask any of them who helps is, Jude in the beginning, right? I can't say enough good things about her. She's my muse, my source for, it's like everything I do to impress her, and it's worked so far for me.
Yeah, so a lot of people like talk about not working with family, but your experience.
Well, we didn't work with each other.
Okay.
At all. She helped.
Yeah,
but we weren't working each other. Kidding me?
Yeah, no, because I spoke with Ninja, and his wife was his manager for a while, and he was mentioning how like it was good, but at some point he's like, he'd be done streaming. He's like, I don't want to talk about work right now. Like, it's like I can see how it's a fine line. But her and your daughter have been kind of prominent on your social media from the beginning. But your daughter now has how old is she now?
15.
15, and she's going to events now and stuff here and there.
Yeah, she's always been at events.
But she's like a little more in the scene. I mean, I feel like she's like maybe more interested than she probably was when she's younger.
She's sort of.
Yeah.
She doesn't have like any social media right, or any of that.
Are you gonna let her?
I am a firm believer in experimenting.
Yeah.
In like she's homeschooled. Okay. She has been. If she chooses to go into the public schools, then she can if she wants to. But yeah, no, I try to be a guide more than a friend. I try to be a guide more than a father, because the father stuff, obviously, like it's in my nature to be a protector, right? So that's taken care of. But to not be too overbearing or too influential in the way that she thinks, because she's gonna be her own person no matter what, and my job is to make sure that nothing gets in the way of her becoming who she's going to become, and I can guide but not influence, and that's important, because the era that I grew up in comes with a lot of baggage, right? I come from an era where the internet wasn't a thing. I come from a Mexican background, which is very machista, and men are men, and your culture too, right? Like it's so having a daughter sort of puts things into perspective, where I would never ever want a man to treat her a certain way. You know what I'm saying? So I have to be careful in the way that I talk to her mom, who is also my business partner and also my best friend. And with that sort of comfort comes a level of comfortness in speaking to them in the way that I speak to everyone. Yeah. And the way I speak to everyone it has a tone to it. It's not my fault. It's the way that I talk. So I have to tune that down a little bit so that it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Is it going to work? We'll see.
So
if she ends up in jail, then we know it didn't.
No, I'm sure. From knowing you and seeing from your wife, I'm sure that she's gonna has amazing role models to follow, and I'm sure she'll be an amazing person like you guys. So if she wanted to be OpTic Live in the future,
she is OpTic Live.
True. If she wanted to make content, though, you wouldn't be against it.
I don't know.
We'll see. You're already 20 years in. I guess we'll see what the future has.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess the last thing I want to ask you is, I think you had the opportunity. You made enough money. You had the opportunity to kind of disappear. So I think I know the answer to this. But do you think you'll ever stop making content, being front and center, ever stop being OpTic Hecz?
Nah, man, I'm an artist, and if I consider something a creative outlet, that's my creative outlet. It's the same way that people exercise to get their stresses. It's like I create. I either draw, I'm either painting, or I'm creating content or being a part of content. If it has something to do with creativity, I have to do it. Otherwise, there's something wrong within me. And even sniping and the montages. Think about the artwork that goes into the creativeness of it. The shots. Obviously, you guys saw the trick shots, but like everything else, like the way that you want to tell your story, like it would have been really easy for us to make an announcement of us picking up a different Halo team. But if you put a little twist on it, and then you don't tell anybody that you're making a move, and then at the end of that video, Lethal sits next to you and says, "Don't worry, we got this." That is different. We could have said, "Hey, we're going into Counter-Strike," but instead we are filming a video, and all of a sudden somebody knocks at the door. You open it. It's Shazam saying, "I heard you guys are looking for a CS:GO team."
Yeah.
That is artistic.
Yeah.
There is creativity in the way that you're not lying and you're not doctoring the truth. You're just putting a little makeup on it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And that's what you love doing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, so for everybody that wants to continue to see me, worry not. God damn it, I want to be there.
And for the people that are, like you said, who want to get between you and OpTic, they should worry because you're not going anywhere.
That's right. Good luck.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. This was a probably longer conversation than I should have had you sitting for, but I appreciate your time.
No, just I could go for hours, man.
Thank you for having me at the Hecz quarters. It is. And I got to probably tap in with you a little more.
Please.
Need some of your knowledge, I think, and
At
some guidance.
anytime.
You already raised a few of those OpTic guys, but if I can get some of the...
Of course.
Some of the Hecz advice, I might need some. But thank you for having me. It was a really nice conversation.
Thank you for having us. Your show. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.